Is India dialing back on its import of crude from Russia? The answer is yes, but not for the reason you think. Well, I'm going to explain by way of a slide deck what exactly is happening and why India is reducing its imports of crude from Russia. A small request to all of you to please like this video, and if you have not already subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe to our channel. Here we go.
I like the treatment here. It's very relaxing and being with the nature.
The most powerful facet that I've experienced here is the power of human touch.
India faces trade heat on Russian oil. We knew that. Trump has been making a lot of assertions that it's going to go up to 50% and so on and so forth. Now, what India has done is that India has maybe dialed it back a little bit, but again the reason is slightly more complicated than what you all think it is. It's not a threat of Trump, it is something else, and I'll tell you what that thing is. As things stand today, the tariffs of Indian products into United States is 50%, and we don't know if that's going to be dialed back. As always, this is a threat. Is he going to carry it out? Because there's a 21-day pause before the additional 25% kick in. But let's take a look at why India is doing what it's doing. As of mid-2025, India was relying on Russian oil for 35 to 40% of its imports, amounting to approximately 1.9 million barrels per day. The source is primarily Russian suppliers, especially following the Ukraine invasion. The reason for the attraction was the discounted pricing compared to Middle Eastern and Atlantic basin grades. So there was I think at one point of time, Russia dangled a $35 a barrel discount. And I think that really attracted India. And I think India then kind of forced the door on Russia by saying that, look, we'll pay for it using rupees. So this thing happened. Russia was desperate, and clearly India was opportunistic. But then you see, every country has to look out for its own interests. So I don't see anything wrong with that. Now what has happened is that there are growing sanctions by United States on Russian companies, Russian operations, and so on and so forth. For example, there are secondary sanctions on 180 vessels or even more than that, and also on Russian exporters such as Gazprom, targeting shadow tanker fleets. Because what happened was, when the Ukraine war started, the standard shipping insurance companies stopped insuring Russian ships. Then Russia had to have its own version of these entities, which would then insure the product, which means that Russia also had to provide safe passage for all the crude tankers to go through the Baltics and also through the Mediterranean and through Red Sea and so on and so forth. So all that stuff takes a lot of cost. Now what has happened is that, see, there is a cost differential. There's a cost associated with transporting, and there is the cost of the crude itself. So this is where things are becoming a little bit difficult and more expensive for India. For example, as of Jan 2025, the freight cost for an Aframax tanker delivery to India is about $9 to $10 million per load, compared to around 6.5 to 7.5 for China. So it's a good 25% markup for India. The narrowing discount has reduced the economic incentive to buy Russian crude, prompting refiners to shift towards non-Russian grades. So India has always been buying oil in spot markets. So now again it is back to the spot markets, looking for the cheapest oil they can buy. So there is a weaning away of oil from Russia to spot markets. Whether it is going to be something that's going to be long term or it's something that will be short term will have to be remains to be seen. Now, private players like Reliance and Nayara Energy maintain longer term Russian contract but also face EU sanctions. So we know that both Reliance and Nayara, which basically get in crude, refine the product and sell the refined product, are now looking at some EU sanctions. then what are they going to do with the refined crude that they are going to produce? That's a good question. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. That's a separate issue. So what happened was, in its effort to go to spot market, the Indian Oil Corporation purchased 22 million barrels of non-Russian crude for delivery between September and October. This includes 2 million barrels of US Mars crude from British Petroleum, 2 million barrels of Brazilian grades from Total Energies via TOTSA, and 1 million barrels of Libyan crude from Petraco. All these things are slightly different from each other. So the refinery process also has to be tweaked a little bit here and there. So these are all things involved. It's not like you can buy any crude and then you can refine it. There are many more things there, many more nuances, and some additives have to be put. It's a complicated process. Earlier, Indian Oil Corporation bought 8 million barrels for September delivery from the Middle East, the US, Canada, and Nigeria. So India is again back to taking a little bit less from Russia and making up for that shortfall by going to the spot market. This is just Indian Oil. Now let's take a look at Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. It too has purchased $9 million for September through negotiations including 1 million barrels from Angola Girasol, 1 million from US Mars, 3 million from Abu Dhabi Murban, and 2 million from Nigerian oil. The arbitrage benefit has improved the economics of importing Atlantic Basin grades into Asia. Hindustan Petroleum Corporation Limited, this is the third company, HPCL. Its share of Russian oil fell to 13.2% in the June quarter, down from higher levels previously. So everybody is dialing back a little bit of their imports from Russia. The decline was due to narrowing discounts, not a political directive. So this is what all these companies are saying again and again. Look, these are just commercial reasons, and we think that Russian crude is not as cheap as previously believed. Therefore, we are going to look at other sources. HPCL is open to resuming Russian oil purchase if the pricing improves and it can absorb the loss from reduced intake. So it's right front and center. If US imposes sanctions on Russian tankers carrying crude, that's going to be a direct hit on the bottom line for Russia when it is giving it to India. Remember, India always expects everything off the shores of India, which means you have to figure out how to take all the other overheads into account, which means that if the Russian conglomerates don't want to do that, effectively the price at the port goes up. And India says, it's not my problem. Whoever gives me the cheapest price at my port, I'm going to buy. So this is essentially commercial dealing. Trump should be happy, in my opinion. HPCL currently has a direct refining capacity of 490,000 barrels per day, holds a stake in HPCL Mittal Energy Limited with a capacity of 226,000 barrels per day, and is constructing a 180,000 barrels per day refinery at Barmer, Rajasthan. The company has streamlined sourcing by issuing a single tender for 4 million barrels instead of multiple smaller tenders. So what are the strategic implications? Let's take a quick look at that. Heavy reliance on a single geopolitically sensitive supplier is now proving costly, posing an energy security risk. Therefore, India is again looking at multiple suppliers. If you look at the history of India's imports, it's been going up and down and up and down. And basically, they look at who is giving them the best bang for the buck. Nothing wrong in that. The tariffs could impact India's exports to the US, adding trade friction to existing supply chain stress. It's one thing that the Indian exports going to US might also be tax upon entry, which means Indian products will be less competitive, say compared to somebody else who's having a refinery, like for example Singapore. India faces a policy dilemma in balancing affordable energy access with maintaining strategic partnerships and avoiding punitive measures from key allies. If India exits from the Russian crude market completely, that will leave China as the only consumer of Russian crude. Is that day going to come? I don't know. It could be. Well, I don't think India is going to completely move away from Russia, because remember, India is still enjoying a rupee trade with Russia. How many other countries will be willing to accept Indian rupee? I think UAE might, because it can pay for its imports from India in rupees. Saudi Arabia might. You see what I'm saying here, right? So, but the message is clear. India is going to try and see how many things, whichever country is willing to take its rupee for the petrol or crude, it's going to grab that. So there are interesting times ahead. US is not going to find it easy to try and browbeat somebody into submission, as India is proving to be. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.